and eating from the trash can all the time. The name of this trash can is ideology.
Where am I? Let's think about how to answer that question. It comes up sometimes in international communities that sort of don't exactly exist over the Discord these days. Where are you? Not necessarily from, because you're not necessarily currently where you are from. I've had to answer that question in hotel rooms. Where are you? I am in a hotel room in, well, usually California. But Oregon, the bottom of the hill from where I live. Wherever. But usually the answer to the question is a socio-normative one, right? Like, the answer to the question is something to do with the socially constructed reality in which we live as a response. Currently, I am in the United States, for example, right? The United States is not a physical object which exists. It is a collective understanding, collective identity, geographically located. The variety of other things that have to do with this as well. I am in the state of Idaho, which is a U.S. Province, but the officiality or independence of provinces within the United States is very different from that in most of the developed world. As such, the term state is appropriate because the United States was originally founded as something more like a League of Nations than what we think of as a federated nation today. It is not what you mean when you say the United States, when you tell someone where you are. I am currently in the city of Boise, which is the big city. It is the largest metropolitan area, certainly the most dense area, for miles and miles and miles in any direction, leading out of Idaho, rural potato country, out into California, Oregon, Washington, our various neighbors, Utah, Nevada. This big city is barely a mid-sized town. The previous mayor was working as hard as possible to get as much California money as possible concentrated into the downtown area of Boise, which exploded in height as well as population. Consider now then what it means. The big city here in Boise is nothing like a major city, let alone the local big city somewhere else. So there are radical differences from the ways that this is going to be perceived, but that perception is automatic. That perception is not something that you're rationally considering. It is extremely contextual, and it might even be the basis of what you see in context when you look at other things. Like if somebody told you that there was a mid-sized town in Michigan, you might think of something being a mid-sized town, but it's going to be radically different from the way that you would think about Idaho here in Boise. When you are told it's a mid-sized town, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're prepared for an island or an oasis of civilization in a sea of potato fields. Rocks, big holes, the occasional mountain. They're hills mostly. We call them mountains. They're hills. Currently, my local lieutenant governor, Janice McGouchin, I don't actually know how to pronounce that, is on a crusade to eliminate social justice teaching from schools under the guise of hunting down communist propaganda. What's important is the performance, and that performance serves first and foremost the white nationalists, which, openly or not, still exist in vast numbers here. Well, vast numbers compared to the general population. Idaho does not have vast numbers of people. There's 1 million people in the entire state, and it's enormous. We have the highest amount of federal public land in the U.S. It's huge. There's nobody living here outside of the greater Boise area. This is also in the wake of the likes of Heather Scott, a local representative, and their affiliates in the Heritage, used to be Heritage Foundation, is now Freedom Foundation, or was Freedom Foundation is now Heritage Foundation. Anyway, they're largely libertarians who are constantly trying to find ways of defunding. As Christopher Newfield pointed out in Unmaking the Public University, defunding and culture war go hand in hand, generally. And one of the ways that they will do things like this is to attack specifically diversity as a term and as a concept, as though the idea of teaching people that there is value to a multicultural society is in itself somehow inherently bad, to the extent that Boise State University was threatened with a loss of $40,000 in annual funding, which led to the canceling of diversity programs briefly, but certainly not permanently. That's what's happening where I am. And this is something very important to consider when we answer the question, where are you, as well. When are these things something that we take for granted as being normal where we come from? And the answer to that question winds up tying into the concept of blood and soil. What is normal for me, what is right for me, what is right for our people traditionally is bound to this geographic notion we have of the land that we live on, which is one of the reasons why things like 23andMe can supposedly tell you where your ancestors came from by looking at your DNA. But it's comparing your DNA to the averages of samples from DNA taken from around the world. But are you descended from a German who is from a long line of Germans who have lived there for thousands of years, or a German who came from Venezuela? It does not know that. And we have this implication that where you are and where you are from is something so natural that it is in our blood, the blood and soil. And it's not true. There is nothing about Idaho that makes me racist. There is nothing about Idaho that makes me avoid education. In fact, many things about Idaho have caused me to engage beyond normal limits to education because it's difficult to get here. I don't have time for that part of this discussion. I already got to cut tons of this shit out. But what does it mean when you answer the question, where are you? And do you understand the answer to the question someone asks you when they ask you, where are you from?